Hello, everyone, and welcome to Practically an Artist. I'm Seth, and this week I'm talking with my really good friend, Jake Lurvey. He is a freelance AC in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area and all-around cool film dude. I think he has a really good and interesting breadth of knowledge and practical experience that can be really valuable. So without further ado, let's dive in as we talk a little bit about being a filmmaker in the Midwest. All right, welcome to Practically an Artist. I've got Jake Lurvey in the house with me today.
Hey.
What's up, boyo? Jake, I want to tell the people who you are, what you do, what you're about.
All right. Well, I am Jake Lurvey. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I am a first AC and aspiring cinematographer. And
keep that on the down low, though.
Okay. Yes. Okay. That was another thing. Real quick. Do you want me to just play the AC thing?
No, do whatever you want. I was just making a joke about you keeping it on the down low.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
You say whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
No one's going to be listening to this. By the time anybody finds this, you're going to be long gone.
If any of the DPs I work with, I was just kidding about the cinematographer thing. And I'm not going to shoot your ProMist filters.
So why don't you take just a couple minutes at the beginning and kind of explain how you got into the AC game, give us the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
And kind of maybe give a little brief overview too of like what it's like getting into the AC game in, the Southwest Midwest area versus trying to start up in, LA or New York where there's already something that's probably a lot more established.
Yeah, so what I think is funny is like in college, I'd AC'd for a DP I really respected kind of my senior year. And I ended up DPing like all of my friends' scripts through college. So I knew I wanted to work in camera department, but there's always like a separation between what you can do, especially in the Midwest, and what you want to do. So when I came out of college, I knew that I had to start paying bills and making a little money. And so I started reaching out to all the production companies and was just trying to grip because I thought, well, gripping is something that everybody can use, no matter what size of shoot that you're on. And, you show up on a set, there's one DP, there's one AC, or maybe two ACs depending on the size. And then, but you may have 5 or 6 grips. Mm-hmm. And, so I thought, well, if I can work into being a fourth or third grip on some things, then, maybe I'll be able to pay bills and I'll have a better chance since there's more grips on set. So started working here with the Social Arcs, which is Paul Wizakowski's company, just gripping out of his truck. At the time that I was doing this, he had just got his package and was building out his truck. So started to do that and ended up gripping for a guy, Brandon Zabel, and he needed somebody to pull focus on a couple of shots. So he looked at me and the gaffer and said, "Who's got my back?" And the gaffer kind of shoved the follow focus in my hands and was like, "Jake's got it." So he ended up cutting. It was a real run and gun documentary kind of thing. And he ended up getting to the cutting room and texting me that, he was able to pick all the shots he wanted because every time he landed, we got sharp, and so he asked me if I would be willing to kind of pursue that a little bit. And I said, well, I love camera department. That's where I want to be. So I was like, yeah, keep me in mind. So eventually, I told him, I said, hey, don't feel like you got to have camera built when you show up. I'll build out camera. I'll set monitors. I'll do everything. And, but I was like, I just kind of started to ask for a little bit more responsibility. I was like, if I'm going to AC for you, I actually want to AC for you. So I started building out my cart and my bag and bought a monitor and eventually my own wireless set and kind of was just with him for a while. And then people would talk to him and ask him, for advice or ask, if he has any recommendations. And next thing you know, I was getting texts and calls. Hey, I got your number from Brandon. Hey, I got your email from Brandon, and I just started getting on stuff and word kind of traveled around. And so I started to AC for a couple different people. And that's how I fell into ACing here in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about networking in a minute, but before we get too far gone, talk a little bit about, because I think everybody has this experience, especially from film school, where you DP or direct everything for 4 years, and then you get out, and it's just not, 99% of people aren't going to get out and be a DP right away. Maybe the very talented ones, and even a lot of the very talented ones aren't going to be right away either.
The ones that can get a loan for a red.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, the ones that can get a loan to build out a full red or RE kit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so talk a little bit about like having to, because I did the same thing, but I did it in a little bit of a different way. I moved into a agency right away, but I didn't move into doing actual like crew shoots right away. So maybe kind of talk about what does it feel like to quote unquote downgrade?
Yeah, so it was really funny, and it makes me uncomfortable to remember this, but right when I got out of college, I was working like heating and air for my uncle's company, and I was emailing all these people my college demo reel, and I was emailing everybody saying, "Hey, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm a cinematographer," and I'm emailing these people that later I see their work and realize that they have Remington clients,
right.
And I'm like sitting there calling myself a cinematographer, and like.
Terrence recognized me.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm a Terrence Malick fanboy. You should hire me. And so,
weren't all film school students out of Oklahoma?
Exactly. Yeah. So when Two the Wonder dropped, we all got inspired. But so it ended up being this thing where, there's always that duality of like, well, I need to pay bills, but I want to be a DP. Mm-hmm. And if you go around as a 19-year-old guy and you're like, I'm a DP, and they're like, what's your favorite lighting package? You're like, I don't know, whatever my school had. Is like,
exactly.
It's a really weird place to be in.
The 2 650s I could rent from my program for the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Fresnel I found at a flea market. That's all I got with no diffusion. And so there's just kind of this.
I mean, it's like a stereotype.
Yeah. So it's like how everybody wants to be the director, because in your head, that's like the highest position you could ever have.
That's the penultimate goal, because you've somehow got it in your head that that's the only way to be the best.
Yeah, and I think it's weird in the Midwest because, if you are in LA or New York where the industry's there, you come out of college saying, I want to be a DP, and you know that you got to land some camera PA gigs, mm-hmm. and then like move into seconding for somebody and get in tight with a first, and the next thing you know, the first becomes a DP, and he brings you on as his first, and so there's a ladder to climb. Mm-hmm. And I think what is hard is you get out of school and your teachers tend to tell you what LA is going to be like when you move there out of school. Mm-hmm. And I went to school in Arkansas, so it's very much southern and rural, and the same situation. The industry is not there. And so you come out of school and you have this like formula of this is how you make it in the industry. But the only thing is you're looking at your hometown and you're like, well, this isn't the industry. And so you're trying to, there's no ladder to climb. So there is the part that you can be 19 years old, mm-hmm. somehow buy a red and call yourself a DP and talk a couple people into it, and then, kind of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And then... which is absolutely a fine career to take. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, and that's what's crazy is like in the Midwest you find those stories.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
you see the people that are very talented DPs, and you realize that it started from faking it till you make it, and which was one of my biggest struggles because I'm not that kind of guy. If I don't know something, I'm going to break down in front of you instead of being able to
definitely
talk my way out of it. So I was trying to. So I'm trying to like figure out what kind of ladder I have to climb. Yeah. And I fell in with this guy that was already starting his DP career, and started firsting for him. And then, but it is funny because you're looking at a place with no career to climb. And with me, there wasn't a lot of people that was just ACing, mm-hmm. And that really wasn't a thing. But you did have, of course, this generation is coming up with, I don't want to say it's easier to be a cinematographer, but it's easier to become a cinematographer. And so As an AC, it's something that gets kind of overlooked sometimes, but growing DPs will realize they get to a point where they can't pull their own focus.
Yeah.
They have too much gear to focus on. And when they start really directing big G&E crews, their whole morning is set up with conversations, communicating with the gaffer, communicating with the director, and they don't have time to set their own monitors, to push their own cart, to build their own camera, to swing their own lenses. They get to a certain point where if a DP wants to grow, they have to have an AC take care of, I don't want to say all the dirty work, but, there's a point where a DP has a full day of creative thinking. And at the beginning, when you have to half shoot car commercials and half shoot stuff you want to, you get to pick and choose some of that stuff. And so...
Yeah, I mean, it's like at a certain point you realize you need that support system.
Yeah.
Or otherwise you're going to plateau.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that those positions exist. Like there's a reason that support system is built out as part of how you do things.
Yeah.
Because without that, those big projects don't get done.
Right.
Or they don't get done well. You've got your rogue savants out there who can pull off something and but even, you have like Gareth Edwards or Shane Carruth who go and like DP, AC, direct, do their entire first movie, but then they never do that again.
Yeah.
They did it once and they get their break.
Yeah.
And they're not out there doing that every single movie.
Exactly. And that's so important to grow. And especially since, if you go to LA and you say, I'm from Tulsa, everybody's going to say, have you ever seen a Red? Have you ever seen a Mini?
Yeah.
It's it's kind of a big joke. And I get that a lot here because I am usually the name that gets thrown out to out of town crews. Just because the people they contact I work with. And so I end up getting passed a lot of work that way. And sometimes, most of the time, they show up and they are just nervous as all get out because they're like, I've got some AC from Tulsa. I hope he doesn't think this is a 5D shoot. And they show up and they're real nervous and then there's kind of that moment where they realize like, oh, okay, I'm in good hands. And it's always a lunchtime conversation on that first day. Like, can you make a living here as an AC? And I'm like, yeah, that's how I pay my bills. And then it kind of puts them at ease and they're like, okay, I'm in good, you've worked with different camera packages. You've worked with different DPs, how to think ahead, but they never expect that, out of Tulsa. And there's just enough of a crew here, and that's what's important, I think, about like being from Tulsa and instead of coming up from Tulsa, learning what an AC is and moving to LA to join all the other ACs.
Right. Yeah.
I think what's important is to, like you said, a project, directors and DPs get so far and then they realize that they have to take that next step and have full crews. And I think that's what is going to push Tulsa and push any smaller town in the Midwest or South is that people need to stay and build the community, because if there's a DP out there that needs to take that next step, that's where I want to come in and say, hey, you're on a Ronin shoot. If you do this really wide sweeping shot, that you're going for, that's only possible if you got somebody pulling focus.
Yep.
Well, if you go and help them out for, as a cut rate or a favor or whatever, the better the DPs grow, the better the ACs grow. And that means that when you have some big agency or some big client in Oklahoma, they don't think they need to bring LA crew because they know that certain DPs are doing it right. They can get the shot they want. And most of that is only fulfilled whenever you take the importance of your crew seriously. Yeah. And so, it's always nice to try to build up the people here and kind of take that Hollywood standard and adapt it to here. And of course you give and, take what you can because it is Oklahoma and everybody's got bills to pay. Right. And, but I do think that it is important to kind of do what you can and build everything here, because if you build the if you build enough of an industry, the ACs can make a living, and then you have good DPs in the making. You don't have a whole industry of somebody lighting, shooting, editing, producing, directing themselves and just
then blowing up and leaving.
Yeah, exactly. Blowing up and leaving, or they work 30 years of shooting weddings and car commercials. And then, when a client here or a company here says, I want good production out of Tulsa, they think, well, the only people here are wedding videographers and, car commercial people. And so they hire
and casino commercial people.
Yeah. And so they just bring in people from out of state, and then that's what continues to like make an economy here in Tulsa with no ACs, because, you can't make a living here, what people think. And, so there's these little gaps, and I just so happened to like fall into that little gap.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think that was a position. And then it turned out that there was just enough people that were on the brink of needing an AC.
Yeah.
That I was kind of the name that got thrown out.
Yeah.
And so
a little bit of a right place, right time kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So do you think that as Hollywood, New York are diffusing outward, that's going to be less and less the case, where in these smaller, but not small networks, but like in these small, newer, up and coming cities, is there going to be less and less of a need to outhouse to somewhere from LA? Are you seeing like that diffusion work its way out to where stuff is becoming more localized and there's less of a leaning on those places, or do you think that's going to be the staple forever?
I mean, I think a lot of it's political, and I think a lot of it is infrastructure, Like I worked on a Tyson commercial where all of the crew is from LA, and they rented their whole camera package from Panavision.
Right.
So we're shooting on an Amira with Panavision, 2x anamorphics, vintage lenses that are just like an amazing package, and that simply wouldn't be able to happen here.
Right.
I mean, the closest Panavision place is Dallas.
Right.
Or Irving, I guess, right outside Dallas. And so I think there's small things like that. But I also think that if somebody in Northwest Arkansas was making beautiful imagery like the people in LA, and had the resources to make beautiful imagery here, I think that maybe Northwest Arkansas, where Tyson is, would be able to see, hey, we don't have to bring in this crew. There's a local company that we can use, right around the corner. But it goes back to just, we got to build each other up. And I think that the more that those videos get circulating where, you see a commercial, or, I mean, I saw something that was locally shot here that was on Hulu the other day, and I knew the people that shot it, and I was really proud of that. And I think that when big company people are watching Hulu and see that commercial and realize it's a local company, I think it's that connection that's got to happen where they say, well, I don't have to, reach out to these people in LA. I can go right next door to the people that shot this and this and this, and kind of get that circulating where it's common knowledge. But I think, you and I know that there's very talented people here.
Right.
But that's because we're working weekend music videos, free documentary, and we know that there's talent, but there's not quite that bridge yet of like talented people to the people with money.
Right.
Because they have this assumption that it's not here, and it can be. We just have to work together and build it.
Okay, this is a little bit of a tangent, but something you said earlier made me think of this. So you talked a little bit about, especially Midwest, Southwest, there's the epidemic of like the wedding filmmaker who's self-taught from YouTube, saved up all summer, bought a 5D Mark III or 6D Mark II, because that's what Casey Neistat has now. And do you think that, I mean, it's multifaceted, but do you think that the YouTube generation of filmmakers, especially locally, that advertise themselves as like, I bought a camera, I'm a filmmaker now. I bought a camera, I'm a DP now. I bought a camera, I'm a wedding cinematographer now.
Yeah.
Like they'll throw a label on it, and now all of a sudden they're making something, and that's their profession with little to no training, which I encourage and support, but it also, is it hurting us? Is it helping us? I don't want people to not learn things. I always tell people are like, where'd you learn that? I was like, YouTube. But you should be learning. But also, does that epidemic of the Neistat fed cinematographer help or hurt us?
I I can specifically talk to that as an AC because my position is very privileged. So usually the thing is like you don't ever come on as an AC to a wedding shoot.
Yeah.
You don't ever come on as an AC to like a run and gun, no budget thing. Mm-hmm. An AC is only considered whenever the DP is like credible enough, and when that DP says, I need my AC with me and here's his rate, and it's for 4 days plus per diem plus travel, that's a big number. And what you're doing is you're telling a businessman, this guy's going to help me do my job. Right. And that's kind of a hard thing because you can't sit that guy down and say, he's going to pull focus and he's going to, swing lenses, and, you can't break it down because they're not going to know what that is.
And sometimes they'll think that sounds like nothing too.
Yeah. It sounds like, bring my buddy on. It'll be a good time at Crafty, and so it's hard to like convince that. And so what happens a lot is when these wedding videographers are trying to land bigger jobs, and I don't ever hold it against them necessarily because they don't realize what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Whenever somebody says director of photography to me, I'm thinking of these people that I've seen from LA. I'm thinking of these people that are on huge projects, the people that, people like I are like watching and saying like, I want to be like that guy. I'm like watching some of these like influential people in this industry. And then you have the other side, which is like this, 5D Mark II guy that is trying to take that next step. So they don't really understand what they're saying. And what's dangerous about that is like, you get a company and he says, well, I'll do it for anything. I'll do it for free just to get my foot in the door.
Give me $150.
Yeah, give me $150.
I'll do a 5-day shoot for $150, please, for the love of God, just take me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because all they have to do is pay off a $600 camera.
Yeah.
And pay no crew and, whatever. So they're sitting there doing that, and you got this guy that's like, well, this person over here is wanting $2,500 a day and has, this big reel. But also, if I could get close to the same product with this guy for $150, like, I'll take a chance. Well, then the guy takes a chance on him, and it just looks nothing like they want.
Yep.
So they realized money wasted. Luckily, it's only $150. Well, that means that next time somebody walks up and says, I want $2,500 a day, and I want to bring my AC on, and I need a 6-person G&E crew, and we need to rent these lenses and this camera package, it starts to add up where they just are like, you know what? I've been fooled once before. And so it's kind of some of those conversations where they're like, well, I wasn't happy for $150. How am I ever going to be happy for $2,500,
People, especially that aren't in the creative field too, I've found over and over again, and it was a hard lesson to learn, especially when you're starting to do client work, is they don't understand how much work it is. They don't understand how much skill it is. And they don't understand how that translates to dollar signs.
Yep.
And it's borderline impossible to communicate that to someone who isn't plugged into that. And even people that are mildly plugged into that, like the company that I worked at first out of college did a lot of website work. And people, you drop a $3,500 website quote for like, multi-page, hand-coded, build your own database. And they'd be like, this is insane. I was like, no, this is like a third of what you'd pay from a normal like production house. We're a small enough, lean enough operation that we can do it for $3,500 and everybody still makes their salary for the week.
Yeah.
But they don't understand how they're like, oh, well, you're just pointing a camera at it. Or, oh, you're just writing a few lines of code.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the hardest part, especially outside of where the industry is more established too, is like assigning your value to things.
Yes.
And the market is so fluid and hasn't really defined itself yet. Like if you're unionized out in LA, then you have a dollar amount that's attached to you. And it is that every single time that's been defined, that's been built up over the last 50, 60 plus years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the YouTube people, I don't want them to not try, but also I think we have a little bit of an epidemic of people thinking that they can be professional at something within a few months of watching a few tutorials, and it can kind of bring down everybody else's bottom dollar. Now,
I will add that, the hard part about that is, that it can really embarrass everybody else, because if they called themselves a cinematographer and somebody else says, I'm a cinematographer, to somebody that doesn't know what that is or what extent that can go to, they're thinking, well, you guys are the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so, we talked about that, but we also, I guess, are kind of saved a little bit with the buffer zone of the client, because the client always has the opportunity to watch the demo reel.
Right.
So if they see the demo reel and they say, you know what, your stuff looks good and good enough for what I'm going for. Now, sometimes they don't realize what is going to separate, an exterior wedding shoot, at sunset. Sometimes they think, well, if you make that beautiful, you can make an interior look beautiful, and they don't realize what it takes to light a big scene. But, there is always that thing that if there is a guy with a 5D that has shot terrible footage, it's going to show. And I hope that the client is always mindful and says, well, prove to us that you can do this big job for us. And if they send them that, they're going to say, we'll keep you in mind. You're not what we're looking for on this project, and so there is always that safety net.
Yeah. And I think people's visual, quality comprehension, I want to maybe kind of touch on a little bit more of just like the networking aspect and how important that is. And that's something that I am terrible at. And that's the reason I've never been full-time freelance, is that just makes me want to rip my eyes out of their sockets. So that seems to be a skill that you've definitely built up over time and have gotten pretty good at. And I mean, like you said, a little bit of right place, right time, but you don't get in the right place, right time if you weren't already out there trying. Yeah. So maybe talk a little bit about like your experience with networking and being a freelancer instead of being, like you said, union, you've got a step-by-step ladder to climb. You have a little bit less of a ladder to climb, especially out of the big hubs.
Yeah. So like I said, a lot of here is people, some DPs that don't think they need an AC, or they're like just transitioning. So kind of the responsibility I try to take in that is a lot of my networking is, of course, I always get brought on by the DP. So I don't need to buddy up to gaffers, and I do on set, of course, because it always makes for a better day. But so I'll just reach out to cinematographers and hey, do you want to grab coffee? Hey, you got any shoots coming up? I love the frames from the last shoot or whatever. Or like, hey, I've been thinking about these lenses. Have you used these? And just conversations like that, but always I try to keep it more personal.
Right.
And I think what you have to do is be smart about what you give and take. We talked about how much it can hurt an economy if you're the guy that's like, I'll do it for free, or I'll do it $50 and you get 60 days of my life for $50. You have to watch that, but there's also things that you can totally do. If you have a friend that wants to shoot a music video, but he doesn't have money to buy ND filters. So it's going to like hurt the way the shoot looks dramatically, float him some ND filters and see if you can AC for him for the weekend, or, So I try to keep enough of that in my life where, there are times that I turn down, full rates and good jobs, multiple days, because I'm helping somebody kind of shoot their passion. And I think that's a large part of like what kind of keeps you going. And I think that's where the networking comes in, is, not so much just saying you should hire me, because, that can seem really impersonal, and nobody really wants to go travel on a multiple day job with somebody that is just trying to get in their pocket. And that it can easily feel like that. But I just always try to like have to remember that we're all in this like kind of for a passion, and there's always the power in storytelling. And no matter if you're setting monitors and you're the techie guy, you're letting somebody not think about that, and they're the storyteller, So that's always important. And I want to make sure that I'm doing that, because if I grow into a cinematographer one day, I'm going to need a lot of support.
Yeah.
Just like hopefully I've given people. And so a lot of that just comes from coffee. And, if you have friends that are writers and you're wanting to be a cinematographer, and you have director writer friends, ask them if they've been writing anything.
Yeah.
And ask them, have you read any stories that's really influenced you lately? And if, because I've done that before and had friends, say, well, I wrote this script, but I could just never shoot it because I don't have enough money to rent a camera and rent lenses. And how would I ever find somebody to shoot it for me? And that's where I think it's important to network and say, hey, this is the package I have. It's only a Sony A7S II, but it'll get what we need, or sometimes it's the best.
Yeah, sometimes the best tool for the job. Yeah.
Yeah, and so being realistic and working within your parameters is really good.
Well, and being fine with sharing your talents.
Yes. Yeah.
When maybe it's not always 100% beneficial to you, other than that you've now made that connection.
Yeah.
Or help someone out, and maybe that translates to a full rate job down the road. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just some good reel content.
And that's the thing. It's all about like looking ahead, because I came out of college and I did really free work, or just like ridiculous rates that what you made in it almost didn't even pay your gas. But you do that for enough people, and you kind of allow this person to make a movie or a commercial really cheap because you cut them a deal. Well, in a year from then, you're going, you're getting a call from somebody and they're saying, remember how you had my back a year ago for $50? Now I've got full rates. Are you still ACing? Are you still doing this? Do you have any rentals? We're going to need a wireless package. And then next thing you know, that person that you kind of helped out a year ago has been able to grow from pitching what they had shot on a low budget. And now they're getting better budgets and getting, and it's easy to get stuck in that spot. But also there's great people out there that will grow and will push for a bigger and better budget and a better crew each time they shoot. And so it's a lot, and I've done free work for people that I don't think, you do that and then you hear that they ended up working at Starbucks and you're like, well, that'll never pan out then.
Yeah. But they're not blowing up. Their short's not making it to Sundance next year.
Yeah. But I mean, when I was a sophomore in college, I spent a lot of cold mornings helping somebody shoot like a hunting TV show. And that is actually, that came full circle. And they said, hey, you did a lot of good work for us for free. Now we have a budget. We're pitching a new show, and it ended up being a really interesting, like, Cinedoc kind of show. Yeah. And that all came from free work I did 2 or 3 years ago. And if it wasn't for that job that I got later that was paying, I probably wouldn't have had enough money to get married. So you just, if you've got 60 people out there, throwing your name out there and saying, we need to bring this guy on, 4 people may actually get you on shoots, but at least you had your name out to 60 people, because if you have your name out to 4 people, maybe 1 a year is actually going to get a budget to bring you on or whatever. And that changes with industries, but around here, that's just realistically what you're looking at is if you've got a DP that they say, well, I only have this for a budget, and the DP is going, well, it can pay my bills, or I can break even if I have to bring an AC or a full G&E crew on, they've got to watch themselves too.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you deal with a lot of that middle ground and a lot of that wagering. Is it worth it? Is it not? Is this somebody I really think is going to come back around and maybe have more jobs? Or is this somebody I want to surround myself with to push me to grow as a person and as a filmmaker and all that?
Yeah, and I think as you do more of those projects too, where it's like, okay, I'm doing this for fun or I'm doing this for real, it helps you find the gaps that you can fill too. Like, I definitely started shifting more and more to post-production the more and more I shot out of college. Like, my first year, it took me a year of shooting bad restaurant commercials and, nonprofit docs that had super low budgets till I finally got to make one thing that I actually really liked and still makes it on my reel. And the biggest compliments I got on that was like, oh, dang, that looks really good. Those colors are really good. And I was like, oh, okay. So you
and you would have never got there without all the other stuff that
I made a bunch of stuff that looked, and you know what? I got to practice a lot on a lot of stuff that no one's ever going to see because it was bad.
Yep.
But I got to hone that in.
Absolutely.
And then I've landed full-time jobs or freelance jobs since then because of that one thing. That I finally worked up to after doing a bunch of stuff that was either not fun or was just for fun.
Yeah.
And probably saw the light of day to 40 or 50 people, but those 40 or 50 people that saw it worked his way back around full circle.
Absolutely.
Keep putting that stuff out into the ether.
Yeah, yeah.
And it helps you practice if nothing else, and it helps you network if nothing else, but I think it also has a lot of other benefits mixed in there too.
Oh yeah. And hey, I think it's very important to have people in your life that, and in your group, I think it's really important to surround yourself because, like every job, there's this kind of connection when you're at the water jug, I guess, and you're talking about, can you believe this new manager we have? Why would they make that decision?
Yeah.
And, sometimes that can kind of break down a company, but there's also kind of this bond. And whenever that person's like, yeah, it's crazy, right? This is the 4th Saturday I've worked.
Yeah.
There's kind of something that's like, that makes it a little okay with you when you're like, oh yeah, I'm not all alone being really annoyed thinking this job is going nowhere. There's other people that are feeling it too. And sometimes that just makes it feel okay. And this industry is the same as any other job. Like, there's times where you're like, you know what, I'm done with this. I can't continue to doing this whole rinse and repeat thing with this particular person or this particular kind of job or whatever, or somebody tries to half your rate enough times, and you take enough half rate stuff and then taxes are due and you start thinking, I may be better off working at a gas station.
Right.
So there's definitely things to wager there, but it's so important to grab a drink with somebody else in the industry, or, it's great to treat it like every other job. You want to bring your friends on, and that feels great because, at some point you're the one that's like begging somebody, hey, first time I can get on set. I don't care if I PA or grip or anything.
Yeah.
Get me on set. And the first time they do, it's like a really awesome moment. And then the first time you get to bring somebody else on, that's also an awesome moment. And so I think it's important to just really stay in connection with your community.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's completely from an emotional stance where you need to talk about how crazy a week long of shooting was and you just got to vent about it to somebody that would understand. Well, when you're doing that, you're also building an actual friendship, and that friend is going to bring you on to shoots.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of comes from, trying to be personal, about your workload, because, if somebody gets a chance to bring an AC on, even if you may not be the best AC around, they may bring you on if the other AC is jaded or is going to not be fun or keep, down talking the project. You just want somebody going in that fight with you, somebody you can trust and talk to. And it's just important to stay in that community enough that you need to. I think it's good to separate yourself as well, so that you're not just like going home thinking about work, which is a huge struggle.
Burnout's huge.
Yeah. And I think that it's just so hard because I think it's hard working in the creative field because you're sitting there like doing what you love. And so it's hard because you can go out and kind of do what you love, but it's also mandated by somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to direct movies, it's not like you're kind of living your dream directing a commercial, but it's going to pay your bills where one day you can direct movies.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to have that split where you realize take it all passionately, but also don't let yourself get down because you feel like a director that's only shooting local casino commercials.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the process and it's making you better whether you know it or not to do movies. And so
learning to take time for separation from what you do on a day-to-day basis is very difficult.
Yeah,
that's something I've had to catch myself on this year a lot. Is I think when you don't take time to make stuff for yourself or even just have a hobby that's completely separate from what you do, I think it hurts you creatively in the long run. Yeah. Maybe some people are machines and can pull that out, but for me, it's just like, if I have no other hobbies or no other free time, or I don't take a few nights a week to hang out with my wife and not think about that edit always turns out being better when I do that than if I don't take that time.
Yeah. And it's hard. You got to I think what makes it a tricky situation is if you shoot stuff for a living and your true passion, you just absolutely love lighting things and shooting things and seeing it all come together. What do you do whenever your job is to shoot that stuff? And then you say, I've got a weekend to do whatever I want. And what you want to do is shoot something. Yeah. So there's that strong divide where you got your passion projects and then you've got your work. And I think at the beginning, I used to think that those were like so different that it was okay. But I'm starting to realize that it almost all starts to feel like the same thread because you have the same thing going on in your head, as far as, from an AC side, like rentals, gear, how's this going to, is this all going to be worth it? Which the budget I have, which when it's your weekend passion project, it's usually nothing.
Yeah,
so
zero.
Yeah. So it's like this hard thing where all you want to do with your money is buy gear. All you want to do, which helps you with your work, but also helps you with, your passion project. So in a way, there's almost no way to separate your work and your home life because you're doing what you love. You don't get to work at the post office and be a guitar player. And so, when you're playing guitar, you're not working. And when you're not playing guitar,
Alabama
you're
Shakes.
working. Yeah. So it's like...
That's what the lead singer for Alabama Shakes did, right?
Oh, I don't know.
I think she was a postal worker before they blew up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were just like a bar band.
Yeah,
so
well, that goes against,
occasionally somebody could do that.
It does work out. If you are in Alabama Shakes, it may just play out for you.
Well, I think it's smart to build division in your life because you're not going to be that 1% person most of the time. And if you are, you probably know you are.
Yeah, right.
So you're probably not.
Yeah.
And
if you're having that question, you're not that guy.
If you're even processing that, then you're not. You're not Gary Vee if you're processing that.
Yeah.
So I think trying to force yourself to adhere to that can cause a lot of people to burn out, and a lot of people to even just like leave doing a creative job at all.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth it for them because they burnt themselves out so much and they have no fun. And like my senior year of college, I did a comedy web series that was not the most quality thing I've ever made, but it was by far the most fun thing I've made in a long time. And that was my big wake up call last year, was like, I haven't filmed something that I thought of and just shot and didn't care and just had a ton of fun making it probably in like a year and a half.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Because you can, when you do it as a job, you start mentally comparing yourself.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I just got off of a $100,000 commercial. This little thing I'm making with my friends that are non-actors, like in my living room, it's easy to convince yourself it's like it's dumb or trivial or and you don't think it's a step ahead, but you gotta, like you said, learn to separate that $100,000 commercial. What gear your mind was in there, and you got to learn to be able to like to die to the ego of your job and be like, what, but this thing that I hope nobody ever sees is going to be fun for me and my friends.
And I got a lot of shot ideas from doing that dumb web series. So it's like, yes, this is a dumb for fun thing, but I actually ended up using a couple of those shots to pitch a thing a year down the road from there.
Yep.
And then got to do a whole shoot around these, like we did these 2 really good glamour shots as a joke in the show that we spent a full day, like got out there at golden hour in the middle of a field, like got a hazer, just like
went all out.
Oh yeah, we hodgepodged it all together. We like borrowed some stuff from a church and walked out in the middle of this field with a generator and a hazer and like got these like 2 or 3 shots for like this video that probably 50 to 100 people saw.
Right.
But that
your
doing
family,
that because of my family and like a few students at a small Christian college. So it's like, but those couple shots, because they were so fun and we were being so organically creative, fueled something down the road. And so I think taking time to do some trivial things, or even if it's not filming, like doing something that forces you to be creative, that you enjoy, whether that's, you paint on the weekends or whatever that is for you, or you do home brewing and you're really into that. And like you've got something that you use that side of your brain on, gets those juices flowing and doesn't let you just stagnate over here.
Right.
In the work world.
Yeah. Like,
can be very beneficial.
Yeah. Like my little backup thing is duck hunting, which is 100% the other world of filmmaking. But I know that, when opening weekend comes and I've got my nasty smelling camo gear out and I'm wearing that instead of my cuffed pants and Nikes or whatever, it's like my brain knows that it's like a different time of year. And, stuff like that is just super healthy to be able to completely switch your brain and go into like a different mindset where now you're watching weather patterns and migration rather than getting all upset over Instagram because your friends are working on bigger shoots than you. It's like,
dang it, they landed that one.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing about working in like a weird fickle industry like this is like you've got to learn your restrictions. And I know for me personally, I can't take Instagram. I didn't give in to social media until like a year and a half ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's because I thought I had to get jobs, and I quickly learned that I'm just not strong enough for Instagram, I guess.
Yeah.
So I had
comparison culture hurts, man.
Oh, absolutely. And instead of living with it and trying to make myself a monster to compete, I just had to like really get off of it.
Yeah, that's what my brother did as well. We didn't get to talk about it very much in the last episode, but he only has an Instagram account that's managed by his girlfriend.
That's genius.
His girlfriend manages it because he does modeling sometimes, and so she posts photos just to keep his modeling jobs so he looks current.
Yeah.
But he doesn't touch it.
Yeah.
He has a YouTube account to watch videos.
There you go.
Doesn't have Instagram, doesn't have Facebook, doesn't have Twitter anymore. He just like does this thing. And honestly, he's probably happier than I am.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's people that just can't quite give that up because they feel like they have to have it. And sometimes it's kind of true, you know.
And if
it's
it is your lifeblood,
part.
I think it probably is for some people. Like there's definitely people like that I follow on Twitter and YouTube that they do branded content based off the fact that they were good at getting content put out on social media.
Yeah.
And they're talented filmmakers, and they're not traditionally like social media stars.
Right.
But their backbone of where their main income comes from has been built around the platforms that they got a lot of followers on.
Yeah.
So they're not like a vlogger or a traditional social media star, but it's like they're doing a Coke commercial for Instagram because they got big on Instagram.
Yeah, right.
And so they kind of have to continue to be big on Instagram to keep getting those Coke Instagram story ads.
Yeah, that's where you get your wife or your girlfriend to manage your account.
So at a certain point, no, man, that would just be crippling for me. I don't think I can handle that. But some people can do it.
Yeah, and if you're somebody that, can have Instagram and can trust yourself not to be on it constantly, or see your friend landed some really job, and, there's no excuse for like just not being happy for your friends. And it's just pathetic whenever you get on Instagram and you see, oh, this person's on this job, and it for some reason is a negative emotion for you, you know? And that's what I started experiencing. I was like, man, there's no reason I shouldn't just be ecstatic that the industry is doing something here and my friends are making money and my friends are feeding their kids, just stuff like that. And I think Instagram just inherently is like so competitive that, and I know people that can absolutely have it and it's great for them.
Yeah.
I really look up to those people. I know that I can't. So instead of trying to make myself something I'm not, I just have to get off of it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't post anymore. I post maybe once every few months, and I rarely look at it other than for stories from people for college. If there was a standalone stories app, I would only need Twitter and stories and I'd be gold. I don't think I'll ever be able to get off Twitter just because I'm a little bit addicted. But
you know that you're real with yourself.
Yeah, and I understand it, and like I temper it, and I think purging your follow list a lot helps a lot too. Making sure you do that like once a year. It's like how you got to wipe your laptop once a year to like get it all cleaned up. You got to do the same for your socials, and I think treating socials as an extension of you. Yeah. Instead of treating them as a separate entity from yourself is always very healthy too. It's like, am I using socials in any way different than how I would interact with people?
Right. Yeah.
In my day to day. And if I am, then it's probably not healthy. Yeah. I mean, it can be crippling. I think, I don't know, you're not as big into YouTube as Daniel and I are, and that's something I've had to catch myself on tempering recently, is that I think I got sucked into comparison culture on a different level where I was so worried about learning how all these YouTubers, I'm like, oh man, I really dig their stuff, and it kind of reminds me of my stuff, and to the point where like my stuff was starting to become their stuff. And that's not necessarily bad, but how do you feel about every filmmaker has a YouTube channel that's their personality now? And I'm obviously exaggerating, not everyone does, but I think a lot of people want to. Like a lot of people are like, dang, man, I'd love to be Peter McKinnon, or I'd love to be Casey Neistat.
Well,
or
you see it
Matt
in everything,
D'Avella.
man. Moonlight comes out, next Super Bowl, every commercial looks like Moonlight. There's just these waves where, and then there will be like one guy that has something go to Sundance that really is unique and different from anything we've seen in years. Oh, yeah. And for the next couple years, everybody's lighting like that movie and shooting the same format as that movie. A new 16 millimeter movie comes out, and man, Kodak's sales go up because everybody thinks 16 millimeters are, the train to hop on. And
that's how the YouTube comments work too. It's like, I think I see a lot of YouTubers always complaining about like their comments are always what body and what lens did you use? What body and what lens did you use? What body and what lens did you use?
Yep.
And like, I definitely was that kid when I was like 16 years old and
yeah.
learning how to make stuff.
There.
I was in those Vimeo comments like, was this a 70?
Yeah. Did you? What kind of filter is on this?
Yeah. Is that a Metabone?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody.
But it's like stuff that I can never afford anyway. I'm like 16 years old in high school, and I'm like never gonna shoot on it. But like for some reason, you become so gear obsessed that recreation becomes more important than just learning how to make stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, you know, I learned some stuff from like replicating stuff, and I think that's a valuable thing to do. Is like go like, oh, you like that shot? Okay, go try to do it. And figure out why you like it.
Right, exactly.
But then you have to make it your own as the next step.
Yeah, you got to learn to critically think about it.
Yeah.
You know, to take something and be like, why do I like this? And how does it fit into the story I'm working on right now? Rather than just being like, let's copy paste it. And because you
like 99% of my stuff that was just Terrence Malick clone footage for a long time.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've all been there where we have a shot in our movie where we're like, I don't understand why I did that. And then you're like, that's because that Vimeo guy got a staff pick and that had that shot in it.
And I watched
that
it 17 times in 1 week.
Yeah, and I tried to make an excuse.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, and then next thing you know, we're all just doing the same thing. But, and, you know, and that's just like another part of learning your own restrictions is like, if I'm going to be in this creative field, am I somebody that can surround myself and see every single thing that Netflix puts out? Or that, you know, I come on set and it's hard because everybody's like, did you see Black Mirror? Did you see this? Did you see that? And I'm like, I haven't watched any of that, but it's because I'm so weak that when I watch stuff, it gets stuck in my head so hard that I don't want to fill it with I don't want to watch a movie that I know that I would never want to make something like that, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. I don't watch anything anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to because you take it not so seriously sometimes, but it's like so near and dear to your heart that, you know, it's hard for me to watch a movie that I know is going to be great. Like if I watch something Robbie Mueller shot, I don't want to watch that late at night because I either shoot it and I'm like, how am I going to shoot something like that? And it like inspires me too much where I'm like, well, now I can't go to sleep. I just want to shoot something. And that's hard whenever you know that you've got 4 weeks of commercials lined up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't watch hardly any of the new Netflix series. I catch most movies once they're on VOD, once I've like mentally prepared myself to watch them.
Right.
I think, I don't know, at least for me, I don't know if it is for everybody, but I do think it's healthy to absorb content in a different field than you're currently in. Like I've found recently that I really enjoy watching anime instead of watching like actual film stuff before I go to bed
because you're not trying to make anime.
I don't know how to make it. And I don't need to know how to make it. And so it's like, it's fun to watch animation because I get a lot of cool visual ideas from it. It's kind of scratches that visual itch that I have in my brain, but I'm not constantly analyzing how they did it. And how I would do it.
It still has that mystery to you.
It doesn't suck the joy out for me. Because I still am like, oh, that's really cool. And I'm sure for an animation student, that's just the same thing.
It's just another study.
But it's something different to where, you know, I'm absorbing some good visual, like brain tickling content without having to constantly compare myself to. Because there was a time where I watched like every indie mumblecore movie on Netflix. Every single one. I probably saw all 40 or 50 of them that were on there a few years ago. But then I kind of ruined them for myself because I'm constantly trying to replicate them now. And so having a healthy approach is hard. And I mean, I'll go see like, you know, anything Denis Villeneuve puts out, I'll go in theaters to see that. Anything that Daniels does, I'll go in the theater to see that, or Spike Jonze. So I've got like my big tent poles that I'll go see. But anything else that I'm like, dang, that's going to be really good, I got to like psych myself up to it.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Blade Runner. Like the new Blade Runner. And
good God, Jake.
Dude, I know. I was almost just praying. I was like, man, I hope that my mind and my heart aligns while it's in theaters.
Mine did, which hasn't happened in a while. But and I even talked my wife into going with me, and she doesn't like to go to the movies, and she didn't like it that much. But it was great.
Hey,
I love
Denis
Villeneuve.
Lucky, man.
But I mean, it's hard to consume what you make, I think, at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
Which is funny because that's how you decide you want to make it, is from consuming it. Like I saw Lord of the Rings when I was 14 and I was like, holy crap, I want to make movies. This is amazing. I love this. And I still watch Lord of the Rings every year at Christmas because it's one of my favorite things.
There you go.
But new stuff doesn't have that same allure because it's not this nostalgic, I wanted to get here thing.
Yeah.
You're constantly analyzing and trying to reproduce it in your brain.
Yeah. And, you find these like little roadblocks in your life where you're like, I can't watch new movies unless I'm really into it. I can't watch too much. I can't watch,
Yeah.
But I've definitely been in places in my life where I've completely lost my passion. And then all I did was watch a couple Vimeo staff picks that I liked.
Yeah, let's fire on your butt.
It just fires me right up. And so it's just this very confusing balance of, well, I don't want to watch anything because I don't want to be too into what I'm making. And then the next thing you know, you're like, well, if I don't watch anything, I just want to, throw in the towel and not make anything. And so
yeah, it's hard.
It is a weird balance.
Depressive, self-reflective artist conversation very quickly.
Yeah. Here we are. We aren't drinking mimosas here.
No,
I guarantee you that.
On coffee cup number 3, but we're drinking uppers, but we're getting down.
Yeah, the caffeine's convinced us that we're the center of the universe right now. But
all right. Well, I don't want to take up too much time. We'll have to do this again sometime because it was good.
I'm a freelance AC in Tulsa. I got plenty of free time. I can guarantee you that.
We'll have to continue this. We'll do a part 2.
All right.
But thanks for coming on, Jake.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you want to plug since you're non-socialed, so you don't really have a Twitter or anything to plug?
No, I mean, I got an Instagram, and if you like my Instagram pictures that are real try-hardy and want to shoot a movie like that, let me know.
You shoot those Instas on film, bro?
I do. That's my big thing. If anybody's wants to throw some money at me for some more 16 millimeter, well, I'll be happy to shoot it for you.
Cool. All right. I'll have Jake's Insta in the show notes. And thanks for coming on, dude.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man. It was a good time.
For sure.
Yep.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. Thanks to Jake for hanging out with me today. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @SethPipe. And tune in again soon for more episodes of Practically an Artist.